Hey guys, how are ya? It's good to be here. It's about winners and losers. I was a social justice warrior. I was like a political activist for about 4 years, and I've been studying psychology for about 1 year. And psychologists have been able to show a lot of evidence that humans desire to be winners. First, we desire to belong to a group, and then we desire to stand out from the group. But you don't need any kind of scientific evidence to know this. It's implicit. For example, in our culture, the way that Australia uses the word cunt. And we're going to go there for academic purposes. So first of all, there's the shit cunt, and then there's the mad cunt, and there's the top cunt. Now the shit cunt will want you to buy them a beer at the bar. But the top cunt will shout you a beer. Right? And most of us kind of are mad cunts, right? And we all want to be top cunt. We all want to be top cunt, but it's often our desire to be top cunt that makes us become a shit cunt. For example, on social media, people want to be seen as a top cunt, so they'll like a young man will like upload a picture of himself doing like gang signs, and the description will say, "Pain is temporary, but a legacy is forever." Just, right? See, his attempt to be a top cunt makes him look like a shit cunt. For example, does anyone remember that show Pimp My Ride? Yeah, where they put like an aquarium in some guy's chute? As if that's the answer. As if that's going to stop all the existential pain at like 2 a.m. at night, you know? Like the idea should be to develop the aquarium within. You know, where's that reality TV show called Pin My Character? You know, we're going to put some fucking gratitude and humility in this motherfucker right here. But I remember a certain moral parable that a guy at a bus stop told me once. It was called the parable of 20 pingers. So there was a young boy in the poorer suburbs, 18, who was a bit of a social outcast. And he saw a peer group, or tribe if you will, whose sacred value was pingers. Who could take the most amount of pingers on the weekend? That was the sacred value. And so he decided to take one of the pingers, and then he became socially accepted. People remembered his name. He wasn't of high status, he was still of shit cunts to mad cunts value within the social hierarchy, but it's a lot better than being no cunt out there in the wilderness. It was now a cunt, you know. And he noticed that there was the top cunt of the group, his name was Bob. And one weekend, Bob declared to the group that he had taken 15 pingers. And instantly, all the men wanted to be his friend and all the women wanted to sleep with him. They were amazed at Bob's amazing championing of the sacred values of the tribe. But our desire to become top cunt is often corrupting. And so what Bob actually did is he only had 5 pingers and 10 Panadol. Right? And even though Bob was getting all this admiration, deep down Bob hated himself for being a liar. And so what happened is Darren was like, well, I want to be loved. I want all this admiration and social status. So he hitched a plan and he got excited. His plan was to have 20 pingers on one weekend, right? And so he showed the entire tribe and said, watch everyone. And he had 20 pingers, 20 real pingers. And, you know, all the men in the tribe, they were amazed at his courage and bravery. They had this weird urge to kneel down on one leg and recognize their new king, right? And all the women just had this like hot rush of blood towards their genitals. They didn't understand why, but Darren had shown the capacity to organise a plan and be courageous in the face of death, which were attractive biological traits. And so what happened is, for a moment, Darren felt all this bliss and people admiring him that he'd been craving his whole life, plus the 20 pingers were starting to kick in. So he was feeling pretty good, and eventually he lost the group and he was just floating around in space. And then he woke up in a hospital, and it turns out Darren had permanent brain damage. He had flown too close to the sun. One will not enter into the realm of the gods without punishment. And so Darren was like, he had his moment, and now he had a permanent stutter because of the brain damage. And he went up to the tribe and he said, hey guys. And people had been shocked at his overdose, and the tribe just looked at him confused, not knowing what to do. And Bob just said, Darren, drugs aren't cool, okay? Now that is the moral parable of the 20 penguin story. Now from that we can see that how the desires to gain status, to be a winner, is often something that is corrupting, and then the values of what constitutes social status of the tribe is often arbitrary and stupid, right? And people have noticed this for a long time. And there was one philosopher who had a particular point of view on this. His name was Karl Marx. And he wrote the Kant's Manifesto. Now, his idea is he was right to notice the tendency of top cunts to become corrupted, right? And he dreamed of some society that you could have a cuntless society with no top cunts exploiting the shit cunt. And I actually fell for this narrative. I was doing stand-up comedy, but even doing well in stand-up comedy, there was some sort of absence of meaning that was going on. And I maybe hated the selfishness of my peers and myself. And so I fell for this ideology. I started hanging out with a bunch of young socialists. And I should have been able to see the warning signs and the red flags. Particularly because they were waving red flags around. And so I spent a few years thinking that I was changing the world. You know, I used to be one of those people going, oh man, the government's corrupt. But then I realised that I'm a corrupt government. My own brain is like a crazy president that does whatever the fuck he wants to. And my subconscious are like the journalists at the White House asking the hard questions. Mr. President, did you say you're going to start going to the gym? Well, we are in a motivational recession at the moment. And as motivation increases, shops will increase. Right? And so what I ended up noticing is I was using all this exclusion of the shit cunt not as a reason to become wiser or to become more empathetic, but as an excuse to hate. It was an excuse to condemn other people. You know, and it was also an excuse not to try in life, not to strive for anything, because I could dismiss it as all being corrupt. So when we can no longer get admiration from the tribe, we go for the best alternative, which is unearned sympathy and a victimhood mentality. So one of my peers in showbiz did a TEDx talk where they talked about being having high functional social anxiety. Now, if your social anxiety is high functioning, it's probably not that bad. Like that would be like me saying I'm a high functioning quadriplegic. Shayne, how are you able to stand? Well, it's because I'm so brave. I stand up because I have the courage as a quadriplegic, you know? So what would end up happening with these socialists is they would also champion the values of the tribe and be vying for social status. They were still just as corrupt as all those bankers that they thought they were better than. For example, there was a story where there was a house party and someone had an epileptic fit and there was an argument between two adults over what to do, call an ambulance or not. And instead of it being two adults negotiating a complicated situation, it became an incident of transphobia, racism, sexism, because one of the people who was in the argument identified as Indigenous, blind, transgendered and female, which in the radical left is like a royal flush. They won the Victim Olympics, right? And so this person that they was denounced on such silly grounds wasn't able to even comment or defend how he wasn't those things. He was banned from certain left-wing spaces and demonized. And the social centre that these socialists organised in, their lease was coming up and they had to organise moving the books or finding a new place. But instead of that, they had 5 meetings about the guilt of this person who wasn't really guilty at all. And it turns out as soon as these people had an opportunity to extract their power and domination over someone else, they lavished in it. But because they had the narrative that they were against that thing, they couldn't see it. So no wonder North Korea or Communist China or the Soviet Union ended up totalitarian fucking nightmares. So if that's not the path to, if that makes you a loser, and following the group can also make you a loser, well, what constitutes a winner? Well, I think ancient philosophy has given us some indication of what that might be, whether it's Stoicism in the West or Buddhism in the East, right? They have an emphasis not on the group, but on cultivating your own individual sense of virtue, rather than trying to gain social status. So what that means is there's a paradoxical relationship going on here, right? Like, for example, a lot of performers are worried whether or not the audience likes them, right? But what I'm actually worried about is whether I like you people. Because there's so many reasons to fucking hate you people. You're lazy, you don't look after your families properly, you waste your money, you procrastinate, you lie to people, you lie to yourself. But most importantly, I'm scared that I'm not going to like you over something as trivial as you not liking me, right? Like, that's the mistake. So Socrates, who was the patron saint of rationality, and what we can potentially attribute science to, some of his philosophical insights, is he was quoted as saying, "I'm the smartest man in the land because all I know is that I know nothing," right? Which is sort of a paradox, right? And there's nothing that creates humility in you more than humiliation. And I spent years being a social justice warrior only to find out that I was the worst piece of shit out of everyone, right? And now that I know that I am a dumb cunt, I can actually improve. So thank you very much for my story. Cheers.